Harland David Sanders was born on September 9, 1890, in Henryville, Indiana, in a humble little home to Wilbur and Margaret and Sanders. His father was a hard-working man who tried his hand at farming and later found work as a butcher, but his sudden death when Harland was only 6 years old left the family shaken and struggling. His mother, left with 3 children to raise alone, had to take up sewing and other work to put food on the table. With his mother gone much of the time, young Harland, being the eldest, stepped into a role of responsibility far greater than his years. He had to look after his younger brother and sister, and most importantly, he had to learn how to cook meals for the family. At just 7 years old, Harland was already standing by the stove, preparing dishes like fried chicken, bread, and vegetables. This early exposure to cooking gave him not only basic skills but also an appreciation for the comfort that good food could bring to people. Though he could not have known it at the time, this would become the seed of his future empire. School was never a place of comfort for Harland. He disliked the restrictions of formal education, and he had a fiery temper that often got him into trouble. By the 7th grade, he decided he had had enough and dropped out entirely. That decision meant he had to find work early, and from the age of 10 onward, he worked in various jobs, moving from one place to another. He became a farmhand, learning the value of long days and physical labor. At 15, he falsified his age to join the U.S. Army, where he was sent to Cuba as a wagoner. His time in the Army was brief but impactful, instilling in him discipline and resilience. After his discharge, he drifted from one occupation to another. He worked as a railroad fireman, shoveling coal into engines, and later as a streetcar conductor. He attempted to study law by correspondence and even practiced briefly, but his short career ended abruptly after a fight with his own client in the courtroom. Sanders was restless, and his life seemed like a series of failures and false starts. He sold insurance for a while, but his inability to follow strict rules got him fired. He tried blacksmithing, painting, ferry operating, and working at a lighting company. Nothing seemed to stick. His temper and impatience often sabotaged opportunities, and by the time he reached his 30s, he had already lived a dozen different lives. Yet, despite the setbacks, he was acquiring skills that would serve him later. He was learning about hard work, about dealing with people, and about never giving up even when life pushed him down. At the age of 30, Harland finally found himself managing a service station in Corbin, Kentucky. It was here that the course of his life began to shift. While the job was demanding, he noticed that travelers passing through often needed more than just gas. They wanted a place to rest, eat, and feel welcomed. Harland's instincts told. By the early 1960s, Colonel Sanders had transformed from a weary 65-year-old man living off his small Social Security check into the driving force behind a fast-growing fried chicken franchise. His persistence was starting to pay off. Every franchise he added brought him both a little more income and a great deal of pride. He was no longer wandering from one failed job to another, but he still worked with the same desperation that had fueled him for decades. He believed deeply that his chicken was something special, something worth sharing with the entire country. Each time he convinced another restaurant owner to adopt his recipe, he felt a spark of vindication, as if all the years of struggle were finally finding their meaning. The name Kentucky Fried Chicken began to spread across the nation. Pete Harmon's Salt Lake City location had proven the potential of the franchise model, and the concept grew steadily from there. Sanders understood that his product wasn't just food. It was an experience tied to tradition, Southern comfort, and a figure customers could trust. His personal appearance and mannerisms became crucial to the brand. Everywhere he went, he wore his signature white suit and black string tie. His white hair, neatly combed, and his goatee gave him the image of a Southern gentleman. This consistency built recognition. People saw him and immediately associated him with fried chicken. Sanders himself was a tireless promoter. He personally traveled to new franchise locations to train cooks and inspect the quality of the food. He was known to fire franchisees who failed to meet his standards, because he knew that one bad meal could damage the entire reputation he was working so hard to build. He emphasized that his chicken had to be cooked in a pressure fryer for both speed and quality, and it had to be seasoned with the precise mixture of 11 herbs and spices. The formula was kept a secret, written on a single piece of paper and locked away in a vault. Only a select few knew the details, and the mystery surrounding the recipe only added to its allure. During this time, Sanders' personal charisma became as important as the food itself. He would visit franchisees not just as a businessman but as a figure of warmth and authority. He shook hands with customers, posed for photographs, and served chicken himself, reinforcing the image that Kentucky Fried Chicken wasn't just a meal but a connection to something authentic. The fast food industry was still in its infancy, and Sanders was carving a place for chicken in a market dominated by hamburgers and hot dogs. By 1963, Kentucky Fried Chicken had over 600 franchised outlets. Sanders was traveling constantly, often driving thousands of miles to meet with potential franchisees. His wife, Claudia, often accompanied him, and together they became the public face of the brand. Yet behind the image of success, there was still a sense of urgency. Sanders was nearly 70 years. When Colonel Harland Sanders passed away in December 1980, he left behind not only a thriving global restaurant chain but also a personal legacy that went far beyond fried chicken. His life story had already taken on the shape of a legend, and KFC leaned heavily on his image to continue its expansion. For customers around the world, the white-suited Colonel remained the symbol of authenticity, Southern hospitality, and comfort food. The business he had built through persistence, rejection, and endless miles of travel was now a corporation with the resources to spread to every corner of the globe. His passing was deeply mourned, but his presence never truly disappeared, because the brand he had created was inseparable from the man himself. After his death, Kentucky Fried Chicken continued to expand aggressively under corporate leadership. The fast food industry was entering a period of global dominance in the 1980s, with brands like McDonald's, Burger King, and Pizza Hut capturing international markets. KFC, with its unique offering of fried chicken and the powerful marketing image of the Colonel, became a strong competitor in this race. Franchise openings multiplied across Asia, Europe, Latin America, and Africa. The red and white striped buckets of chicken became instantly recognizable symbols of American fast food. In places where hamburgers and cheeseburgers did not immediately fit local preferences, fried chicken offered a familiar alternative, making KFC particularly successful in regions where poultry was already a staple part of the diet. Sanders' decision to sell the company in 1964 for $2 million was often revisited in conversations about his life. Some argued that if he had held on longer, he could have earned far more as the company exploded in value. But Sanders never regretted the choice. For him, the money had provided security in his final decades, something he had never known before. More importantly, it had ensured that KFC would grow beyond what he could personally manage. He understood that his role was to create, inspire, and symbolize, but not to handle the complexities of running a multinational corporation. His genius was in his recipe, his pressure-frying method, and his relentless salesmanship. The businessmen who bought the company had the resources and structure to take it global. Even after the sale, Sanders had remained deeply involved, traveling constantly to promote the brand. In his later years he had sometimes been critical of corporate decisions, especially when he felt that quality was sacrificed for efficiency. He had spoken openly about his dissatisfaction with the gravy, claiming it had become nothing more than sludge, and he lamented shortcuts that altered the original methods he had perfected. His blunt honesty sometimes caused friction with the company, but it also reinforced his authenticity. Customers believed him because he was not afraid to call out what he saw as wrong. That honesty, Eve.